But I'd like to welcome my first guest, as we always have during this hour on Friday, Go Local's Hot or Not columnist, Russ Moore. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
So I was just telling folks, the Speaker of the House had taken to Twitter to call out the governor for her approach to the elimination of the car tax versus his, which is looking for total elimination. Now, there's going to be a story up on Go Local shortly about this. What's your take on that? Now, it's interesting that he took to Twitter initially for this, as I'm looking at the tweets here.
It is interesting that he took to Twitter, but my reaction to the whole situation is, can't we all just get along? Why do we have to always be fighting with each other? Can't we just work together and do the right thing by the people of Rhode Island? Why does everyone have to carve out their turf and attack one another? I mean, here's two state leaders that are of the same party, and they just can't get it together. They're supposed to be serving the people of Rhode Island, not fighting with each other. I don't know what's wrong.
Well, it's interesting. Apparently the Speaker's office did put out a statement about this, and again, we'll have something up shortly. You wondered if there was some sort of middle ground, but it appears almost like a zero-sum game of winners and losers.
I will say that the governor did hold a press conference prior to the 2014 election with Mayor Elorza, and said that it was her intention of eliminating the car tax. She did go out and say that prior to the election, and she gets elected, and we didn't really hear much about it after. So on that front, I have to sort of agree with the Speaker of the House, and now that he's on board, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we getting rid of this regressive car tax?
So we'll see moving forward. Again, the governor put forth her budget proposal, and now we're looking to see what ends up coming out of the House. So stay tuned. You think it's going to be quiet during a recess week during the General Assembly, but
it is never quiet in
it's
Rhode Island
Friday
politics.
afternoon, 4 o'clock, tweets coming out, guns a-blazing from the Speaker's office. So we'll see what the governor's office responds. And then again, when they're back in session next week, we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
So here to talk about this week's Hot or Not list, let's start off with, you had Norwegian Air is hot. They've been all over the news.
They are hot. They have been all over the news, and they're going to be providing flights directly to Europe from TF Green Airport for limited time as low as $65. And I don't know what's hotter than that. It's economic development, it's good service, it's tourism, it's everything we want in Rhode Island. And I do think this is a big win for Governor Raimondo.
And I'll tell you, I think the $65 flights did sell out because they said
No
they
surprise
only had up to 10,000 tickets.
Sure.
I believe the next...
Did you get one?
Possibly.
Oh.
Possibly.
Someone's going to Europe. All right.
Hopefully heading to Europe. Beat that deal. I mean, talked about in terms of, again, international access for a really reasonable fare. Again, now they're at $99. So
even that, the Acela would be about $200 just to go to New York City. So it puts it in perspective, in my opinion.
Yes, it certainly does. And you also put on the hot list Governor Raimondo,
Absolutely.
Iftikhar Ahmad with the Airport Corporation, and Jonathan Savage.
Absolutely, because they made it happen. That's what we need in Rhode Island. We need people to actually get things done, and that includes Governor Raimondo. Make no mistake about it. This is a big win for the governor. This is a check mark next to her name. It's something she's going to campaign on, as well she should, in the next election cycle.
And if you missed it today, Go Local wrote this TF Green able to jumpstart the Rhode Island economy. Now, here's something that, again, very much driven by the private sector with all hands on deck to make this possible. Obviously, political implications. Now, did you see they're talking about next steps? So Toronto, he said, Iftikhar Ahmad said that they're looking at and fanning out into Europe. I mean, is there any downside to the expansion of TF Green?
I don't see any downside. I'm sure that the folks who live in Warwick and those neighborhoods surrounding the airport aren't crazy about it, and I get that, but at the same time, the airport is an economic development engine for the state of Rhode Island, and we need a big airport. We need a thriving airport, and if we can get flights to Toronto, flights to more locations in Europe, this is all positive for Rhode Island as a whole.
Okay, so again, Norwegian Air. Chafee, former governor, former senator, former Warwick mayor, Warwick town councilman, had him on the hot list.
I've got him on the hot list once again. He's making the media rounds. He sounds confident. He's criticizing Governor Raimondo. It wouldn't shock me if because he certainly didn't shoot down the idea of running for governor again, reassuming the top job. It wouldn't shock me if he ran. I think he'd have a shot. I think he could outflank the governor from the left, ironically enough. And I definitely wouldn't count him out, and he sounds confident, and he's making a lot of good points, particularly about some of the what he would call corporate welfare that we've seen in Rhode Island over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he definitely has made the media rounds. We talked with him here on Go Local Live right after he'd done the Russian TV.
First local interview.
The first local interview after he did, excuse me, Russian TV. And it was certainly very interesting to hear from him. Now, again, he claimed, being right on a number of issues, obviously, focusing on Iraq, going back to his days in the Senate, being the lone voice of dissent, which is why he said he had run for president.
Sure.
But then 38 Studios.
He was certainly right on 38 Studios. I would add a lot of people opposed 38 Studios before it happened. It seemed like at times the only person who really didn't oppose it was Governor Kachiri and the Speaker of the House. But to his credit, he was right. He was the most vocal opponent, perhaps, and that's certainly a feather in his cap. And he can, listen, I think the national economy improved, and I think Rhode Island benefited from that. But he can certainly say that under his tenure, the economy improved and we added jobs. So I think those are two or three strong arguments that Governor Chafee could make to try to once again become Governor Chafee. So I think if I've learned one thing in Rhode Island politics over the last, I'd say 15 years or more, don't count out Lincoln Chafee.
Would you have thought, after the presidential run, obviously after, having been governor and after having, decided not to run for re-election, could you have envisioned him as being a name in contention for 2018?
Conventional wisdom says no. However, I have learned from the past not to count out the Governor Chafee. He's certainly a talented politician, and he's certainly pretty good at reading the tea leaves, and he's certainly he's a sharp political guy. He's certainly got his foibles, as we all do. But I think that he's a talented guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he throws his name in again.
And don't forget, he's been around, had elections that he lost and come back, and a lot of times that happens in the political arena. Obviously, people come around for other opportunities.
Sure, he's done that before. He lost the election to Sheldon Whitehouse, and everyone counted him as dead politically speaking. And here he comes in 2010, runs for governor and wins. And he chose not to seek re-election. He made an attempt at the presidency. It was a long shot bid by anyone's estimation, and obviously it didn't work out. But again, I wouldn't count him out going forward. Underestimate that man at your own risk.
So it's interesting, though, we saw when the governor put forth her budget proposal, and just a lot of things that she's talking about, free college tuition, a lot of things that people have said maybe she's been tacking a little bit left. Do you see that as being part of her sort of agenda, having seen the defeat of Hillary Clinton in the primary here and the win of Bernie Sanders?
Sure.
Do you see that's, looking at 18, do you think that she's trying to move a little to the left to try to stave off some opposition from a challenger?
It's hard to say what her political strategy is. It's certainly, free college tuition will appease progressives. I'm not sure how good of an idea that is. I'm not sure if it's tenable. I'm not sure if it's logical or even feasible. But I do think that it's certainly an attempt to tack to the left to try to kind of outflank someone who may try to run in a Democratic primary to her left. Sure, I think that's a good point.
Okay, I'm looking here again at the Hot or Not list. If you haven't checked it out today, on Go Local, looking to see who else you have as hot. Oh, who's hot? PC men's basketball.
Absolutely. Another person you don't ever want to count out is Coach Cooley. I thought this team was done when they had some pretty bad losses to teams like DePaul. But sure enough, last night, they beat 2 nights ago, they knocked off another ranked opponent, and they've knocked off 3 ranked opponents in a row, and now they're in contention to make a run at the NCAA tournament. It's conceivable that they could beat Marquette tomorrow night at home, then win 2 games that they should win, DePaul and St. John's, and then they're right on they'd be in the tournament. They'd have a 10-8 record, and they'd be back in the NCAAs for 4 years in a row, and we'll have to build a statue to Coach Cooley somewhere because no one thought that was possible years ago, even 5 years ago.
Looking at March Madness, baby.
Oh, best time of the year for sports, anyway.
I know Russ likes this much. March Madness. Marquette tomorrow, are you going to be there?
Yes, I will be there. Absolutely. Look for me.
Sold out PC Marquette game at the Dunk tomorrow.
But I've got tickets.
I've got tickets.
Oh,
maybe I'll see you there.
You never know.
Other folks on the hot list. Shayna Moakler from Barrington, the former Miss USA. Now, a couple of reasons she's back. Another reality show. Now, she did Meet the Barkers. Meet the
Barkers with Blink-182 drummer Travis Barker. So it was an interesting show. I remember watching it back in 2005, 2006. It was interesting. It was entertaining. It lasted 2 seasons. So so I threw her back on the hot list because she is from Barrington, Rhode Island, and she is representing Rhode Island, and hopefully she does it in a positive light, in a positive way.
Yeah, she's been, a lot of reality TV, Bridalplasty for a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one so much. I gotta confess.
I didn't see Bridalplasty, but here's someone who, again, still is, a mover and a shaker in the entertainment industry from here in Rhode Island. Now, did you see when we had tweeted out, she's apparently been reported to be having a Lifetime show, so that's why we reported it. Sure. And she retweeted us and said, it's nice to be when you're recognized by your local paper. So apparently we are the local paper.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
If she says it, it's true.
If she says it,
if someone on TV says something.
So then now we just need the legal notices.
That's all.
Okay. So let's get off the hot list here and look who's on
the list that everyone doesn't want to be on.
The not list. So
right.
You scroll through, you look at who's hot, and then you look at who's not. You put Representative Anastasia Williams.
Yeah, I did. The John Hope Settlement House is back in trouble again. They're talking about potentially closing the daycare center. They've been out of compliance on numerous federal grants, mismanagement, and she's the chairwoman. So I think that should land her on the not hot list.
Now, it's interesting. We did report we got a hold of an email that was confirmed by a board member that had language that was going to be sent out to parents and to staff members about closing the doors. Now, we reached out to Representative Williams afterwards for comment about that. This email that came from her did not get comment on that. Now, a lot of stuff at DCYF this week, they did decide to leave the daycare open and are going to revisit the issue. So whether or not that was in relation to the DCYF issue, but we know they have funding issues.
Sure.
Major funding issues. Actually talked to the board member today about it. We're going to see exactly what happens. It's just such a prominent institution within the community.
Absolutely, and Representative Williams can't be found with a search warrant at this point. So I think that's another reason to, land yourself on the not hot list. I mean, the best thing to do when the press is looking for you is to answer the phone, I think.
Steve Perry on the not hot list.
Sure. Commissioner Perry had mentioned that he doesn't think that the Providence police officers should be working in concert with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And I think that's a flawed strategy. I think law enforcement should always be working together. They should always be on the same page. And I think that he, along with Mayor Elorza, are playing a dangerous game, and they could be endangering federal funding to Providence. And we all know that's the last thing we need in Providence, is to lose money given our financial situation.
We'll see what happens with that. Now, an interesting one you put on the not hot list, and considering that you've been on a lively experiment, and you did put Rhode Island PBS on the not hot list for potentially being on the federal funding on the chopping block.
Sure, I don't have a problem with Rhode Island PBS in any way, shape, or form.
It's
just for them, it's a not hot thing that it looks like the president in his budget that he's going to introduce to Congress is going to cut funding to the National Arts Endowment as well as public broadcasting, and I think that could have a very negative effect on Rhode Island PBS. So I think for them the outlook is not hot, but I hope for their sake that Congress, although it is a Republican-controlled Congress, will get in the way and say, look, this has value, because it does have value. Of course, public broadcasting has value, and I think that hopefully for them, they will land on their feet.
And what do you have to say, clearly from the Republican side of things? They've made this argument that public broadcasting has been too political or too far to the left. Is that a valid argument for defunding public broadcasting, which provides a wide spectrum of programming, especially early learning and children's programming?
I'm a pretty moderate guy, so I can see things through both political spectrums, and I don't think that argument holds water. I think that the Republicans and conservatives are being a little overly sensitive. I think, as you point out, public broadcasting does do a lot of positive things for children's reading and children's learning and education, and I think it would be a shame to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, even if there are programs here or there that do lean left.
Okay, and last on the not hot list is a sort of a national not hot item. Micah Brzezinski on Morning Joe. One morning this week.
Speaking of leaning left, Micah, all right.
Talk with us a little bit about this, and we've talked about the issue in the green room. Why on the not hot list?
Sure, when Micah gets on the air and she says that President Trump is trying to control what people think, and that's our job, our meaning the media, that's not hot. I don't think the media's job is to control what people think. I think the media's job is to present facts and let the public decide what they want to think. So I don't know if Micah did misspeak. she didn't move to correct herself, and they just kind of moved on. So hopefully she misspoke in some way. I can't envision how, but I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, I guess. But in any event, that statement, not hot.
You know, when at a time when the media is often maligned as
Under
being
siege.
this one conglomerate
Yeah.
of, we're certainly different than a lot of other media here at Go Local, as evidenced by our new Go Local live forum, which we have been having great response to.
Absolutely.
But again, yeah, to control what people think, that again, that's not my job. My job is to present information to folks and let folks know.
Kidding. I'm only kidding.
and let folks decide.
Present the facts and let the public decide.
And that's exactly it. Now, Russ, again, your opinion columns, hot or not, is the more. And as we discussed, I think when you first came on, you don't really do well with people lobbying you to land on.
Listen, I love reading email, but unless the person that you're has a really good reason, if they're doing well in the news or they've done something well for the community, I'm not just going to put a friend of yours on the hot list because they're a friend. It doesn't work like that.
Again,
Nor should it.
Again, you've heard it. Probably see you at the Marquette PC game tomorrow.
Probably. I'll be there. I think I'll see a lot of people. Hopefully I see you.
Okay, Russ
All
Moore,
right.
Go Local, hot or not
Thank you, Kate.
columnist. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.